Vanderbilt and Oklahoma looking to continue this thing between these two proud conferences. Off the start this afternoon.
Now, Fran Fraschilla told me back in November, this young man's going to be a star. He played like a star the other night against Oklahoma State. And not just with his points, but also his commitment to play defense. That's what stood out to Lon Kruger.
And Vandy making his third career start, third in a row. He has not had a turnover in either of his first two starts. It's the Sooners in their crimson and cream with the basketball first. Vandy lobs it inside to Doolittle, who lost it out of bounds. Last to touch, though, was Matthew Moyer, and so Oklahoma will keep it.
Vanderbilt played an outstanding matchup the other night against Tennessee. They've got to lock in at the defensive end and play with that same level of intensity.
Nice look on the inbounds from the enemy to Braden Manick, and it was a question coming in whether or not Manick would be able to play. He's been under the weather and hadn't practiced the last 2 days, but he did go through shoot-around this morning, and Brady Manick has the first 2 points of the ball game. Pass too hot to handle for Aaron Neesmith out of bounds, back to the Sooners.
This year, Oklahoma has started its season and played through the year with a commitment to the defensive end of the floor, where a year ago, a lot of that commitment was to the offensive end because of Trae Young and his level of skill set.
Rashard Odoms, the senior from Copperas Cove, Texas, with a layup. Part of this big senior class we referenced off the top that if Lon Kruger's team is going to get where they want to go this year, they'll need this senior group to lead them there. Saban Lee, sophomore, taking over the point guard duties for the injured and gone Darius Garland. He's got it from the corner. And he picks up the assist on the triple by Neesmith.
Yeah, a nice job that time by Lee. A little drag dribble away and then the counter. Because you get the defense shifting, thinking you're going to bring the ball back to the top of the floor. You find the shooter in the corner, get his feet set underneath him.
Well, Oklahoma State has beaten South Carolina up in Stillwater 74-70 as this SEC Big 12 Challenge continues. 3-point bucket for Christian James.
A great sign to see him get a little bit more consistent from beyond the arc. And we talked to him before the game. I said, hey, what's going on with your shot? Why hasn't it been as consistent as I think a lot of Sooners fans and a lot of college basketball fans thought it would be this year? He said, you know what? Watching videotape, I think it has to do with my guide hand. When I'm making the three-point shot, I'm holding my guide hand. When I'm not, I'm dropping it.
He finds Manick, who misfires.
It's important to watch film as a player. We underestimate that. You know, these guys are so talented and so good, but you have to be able to pause and fix your game even in the middle of the season. And Christian James focused on becoming a better shooter.
Yeah, he's been around. Remember, Christian James was a key reserve on the team his 2015-16 season that made it all the way to the Final Four. Of course, led by Buddy Hield, and Christian James listed at 6'4", 213 pounds out of Bel Air High School in Houston, Texas. He's among the league leaders in the Big 12 in a lot of categories, and he can be a real catalyst.
Oh, he impacts the game. He's become a really strong rebounder as well.
The enemy's pass out of the reach of Manick, out of bounds. And it goes to Vanderbilt.
He just said he didn't have a turnover, and now he's got one.
Oh, you knew it was going to come. Saban Lee, the 6'2" sophomore from Phoenix, Arizona, triggers the offense for Vandy. Lee's pass taken away by Bieniemy. He's got Shatu to beat. James drops it back for Doolittle. Nearly traveled, and then he missed the layup.
It's not as bad as Giannis's missed dunk last night. Did you see that?
I did. Nice job by Saban Lee to get to the bucket. Well, they were just raving, the Vanderbilt folks were, about how well Saban Lee had been playing off the ball coming into this year through the first 4+ games before Darius Garland went down. So on the fly, Saban Lee and by extension head coach Bryce Drew have had to completely rework their thoughts for this season.
You don't have to rework your thoughts, and if you're Lon Kruger, the thought process is very simple right now. Christian James, who we talked about at the open of this game, get him the ball, get him involved, and keep him involved. And he's done a great job early, back-to-back three-pointers for Christian James.
Moyer, Lee, Chateau, Yanni Wetzel, and Aaron Neesmith on the floor for the Commodores. Vanderbilt comes in 9-9 overall, but winless in conference play. But this a chance as Chateau travels to try and pick up a big road non-conference win. Back to
and not just with his points, but also his commitment to play defense. That's what stood out to Lon Kruger.
And the enemy making his third career start, third in a row. He has not had a turnover in either of his first two starts. It's the Sooners in their crimson and cream with the basketball first. The enemy lobs it inside to Doolittle, who lost it out of bounds. Last to touch, though, was Matthew Moyer, and so Oklahoma will keep it.
Vanderbilt played an outstanding matchup the other night against Tennessee. They've got to lock in at the defensive end and play with that same level of intensity.
Nice look on the inbounds from the enemy to Braden Manick, and it was a question coming in whether or not Manick would be able to play. He's been under the weather and hadn't practiced the last 2 days, but he did go through shoot-around this morning, and Brady Manick has the first 2 points of the ball game. Pass too hot to handle for Aaron Neesmith out of bounds, back to the Sooners.
This year, Oklahoma has started its season and played through the year with a commitment to the defensive end of the floor, where a year ago, a lot of that commitment was to the offensive end because of Trey Young and his level of skill set.
Rashard Odoms, the senior from Copperas Cove, Texas, with a layup. Part of this big senior class we referenced off the top that if Lon Kruger's team is going to get where they want to go this year, they'll need this senior group to lead them there. Saban Lee, sophomore, taking over the point guard duties for the injured and gone Darius Garland. He's got it from the corner. And he picks up the assist on the triple by Neesmith.
Yeah, a nice job that time by Lee. A little drag dribble away and then the counter. Because you get the defense shifting, thinking you're going to bring the ball back to the top of the floor. You find the shooter in the corner, get his feet set underneath him.
Well, Oklahoma State has beaten South Carolina up in Stillwater 74-70 as this SEC Big 12 Challenge continues. 3-point bucket for Christian James.
A great sign to see him get a little bit more consistent from beyond the arc. And we talked to him before the game. Said, hey, what's going on with your shot? Why hasn't it been as consistent as I think a lot of Sooners fans and a lot of college basketball fans thought it would be this year? He said, you know what? Watching videotape, I think it has to do with my guide hand. When I'm making the three-point shot, I'm holding my guide hand. When I'm not, I'm dropping it.
He finds Manick, who misfires.
It's important to watch film as a player. We underestimate that. You know, these guys are so talented and so good, but you have to be able to pause and fix your game even in the middle of the season. And Christian James focused on becoming a better shooter.
Yeah, he's been around. Remember, Christian James was a key reserve on the team his 2015-16 season that made it all the way to the Final Four. Of course, led by Buddy Hield, and Christian James listed at 6'4", 213 pounds out of Bel Air High School in Houston, Texas. He's among the league leaders in the Big 12 in a lot of categories, and he can be a real catalyst.
Well, he impacts the game. He's become a really strong rebounder as well.
The enemy's pass out of the reach of Manick, out of bounds. And it goes to Vanderbilt.
He just said he didn't have a turnover, and now he's got one.
Oh, you knew it was going to come. Saban Lee, the 6'2" sophomore from Phoenix, Arizona, triggers the offense for Vandy. Lee's pass taken away by Bieniemy. He's got Chateau to beat. James drops it back for Doolittle. Nearly traveled, and then he missed the layup.
It's not as bad as Giannis's missed dunk last night. Did you see that?
I did. Nice job by Saban Lee to get to the bucket. Well, they were just raving, the Vanderbilt folks were, about how well Saban Lee had been playing off the ball coming into this year through the first 4+ games before Darius Garland went down. So on the fly, Saban Lee, and by extension, head coach Bryce Drew, have had to completely rework their thoughts for this season.
You don't have to rework your thoughts, and if you're Lon Kruger, the thought process is very simple right now. Christian James, who we talked about at the open of this game, get him the ball, get him involved, and keep him involved. And he's done a great job early, back-to-back three-pointers. for Christian James.
Moyer, Lee, Chateau, Yanni Wetzel, and Aaron Neesmith on the floor for the Commodores. Vanderbilt comes in 9-9 overall, but winless in conference play. But this a chance as Chateau travels to try and pick up a big road non-conference win. Back to Norman in a moment.
Kentucky Wildcats, it's a new crop every single year, the one and done. But John Calipari's group has really turned the corner. And as much as we talk about talent, when you talk about talent, you usually focus on what? Offense. They're the #1 scoring defense in the SEC right now, and nobody's talking about it. They're second best in the conference in scoring points off of points off of turnovers. Keep that in mind, because one of the things Kansas has struggled with on the road in conference play so far is taking care of the ball. It's going to be a tough environment to run.
Ashton Hagen's the terrific freshman point guard, part of that defense spearheading it for Kentucky, much like Trey Jones for Duke. Shot clock at 1, and the 2-point bucket is buried by Cleavon Brown, a young man who barely shoots any shots from the perimeter, only 1 for 6 on 3-pointers with a big bucket. Commodores down by 3.
Sometimes when you don't think and it's out of necessity, it ends up being a picture of beauty, and it was.
Matt Ryan, the Notre Dame transfer, off the bench with 2 points.
A nice job responding out of the timeout. You're trailing by 5 early. You're on the road. You've got to stay in the game early. That's important for Vanderbilt to continue to build confidence as this game goes on. Remember against Tennessee, they were getting thumped early in that game, and they were able to respond.
Imani McNeese fouled. Gives us a chance to tell you that tonight at 8:30 Eastern on ABC, it's NBA Saturday Primetime presented by HyperX Gaming. Steph playing the Warriors in Boston to battle Kyrie and the Celtics. Coverage begins at 8 with NBA Countdown presented by Straight Talk Wireless. You can watch both on the ESPN app.
I was on Get Up yesterday. They had me and Stephen A. Smith talking about which one has the better handles. You know, and it's hard because I think with Steph, you fear his shot more than anything else, right?
He's getting it for himself.
All right, but with Kyrie, you really fear the level in which he can attack off the bounce because he is so good with it.
Shot clock violation for Oklahoma. Vandy gets it back with a chance to take the lead. So I got a question for you, Sean. How many Hall of Famers will be in that Celtics-Warriors game tonight?
I'll go 4.
Okay.
Only 1 from the Celtics, though.
Okay.
Which means the 3 I'm going with are Steph, KD, and I think Klay Thompson's going to be there when it's all said and done.
Welcome those of you watching on ESPN2. With Sean Farnham, I'm Doug Sherman here in Norman, Oklahoma, where the Sooners hold on to a 1-point lead in this matchup between SEC and Big 12 combatants. Aaron Calixte, just off the bench for the Sooners, has that shot deflected, perhaps out of bounds. The officials confirm.
It's a great crew that we got.
And it'll stay at this end. Indeed, it was a blocked shot that will allow the Sooners to keep it with 17 seconds on the shot clock. Well, Sean, we talked a little bit about the fact that Vanderbilt has had to rework its thinking coming into the mid part of the year from where they spent the summer, the fall, and the early part of the year because of the big injury to Darius Garland. And head coach Bryce Drew gave you and I a terrific analogy earlier today about what they're going through.
Yeah, he says like a football team, right? You spend the entire offseason, you start the year running the spread offense, and then all of a sudden, midway through the year, you've got to downshift and go to the wishbone. And that's essentially what Vanderbilt has done. I mean, they are working on their offense, putting in new sets and plays this morning at shoot-around before this game. And Oklahoma fans can understand this. A year ago, it was Trae Young that was the guard, the freshman guard, the face of the sport for college basketball. Darius Garland would have been the freshman guard that we were all talking about. Think about how limited he played this year as far as his games, and he's still predicted to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft this year.
Nice bucket by Saban Lee. Now the timelines are completely different, but I think there is a comparison to be made by what Vanderbilt is going through now on the fly to what Lon Kruger has done to adjust back his roster after what Trae Young did last year.
And it's been the attention to the defensive end of the floor. Lon Kruger's teams have always been really strong defensively. Last year, that was not the strength of the team.
Christian James now with 8 points to lead Oklahoma. He was held to only 5 in the win over Oklahoma State on Wednesday. Brown has to kick it out. Wide open look, Matt Ryan. That's a beautiful set for Vanderbilt. Matt Ryan started the first 17 games of the year for Bryce Drew, now coming off the bench. And while his overall numbers aren't great, Wetzel off the steal lays it in. Vandy does have weapons that Coach Drew can go to.
Well, and then they play hard and they play together. And a lot of times when you lose somebody like Darius Garland, your team starts showing it falling apart and there's cracks in the foundation. That hasn't been the case. They've actually pulled this team closer.
Aaron Calixte, who started the first 17 games of the year for Oklahoma, now comes off the bench with 5 quick points. The graduate transfer from the University of Maine puts Oklahoma back on top 17-16. Ryan, high-low, Wetzel. Blocked from behind. And you know what? That is his former teammate from high school in Auckland, New Zealand, Matt Freeman, blocked him from behind. We'll talk about that and that relationship when we come back.
Vanderbilt right now. I mean, look, they got up to a slow start the other night against Tennessee, and they responded. And they fought back in that game, had a late lead. They were up by 6 before a hook and hold was called and kind of changed the way that game finished. But on the flip side, you look at Oklahoma, Christian James coming off the season low in production with only 5 points, has gotten off to a very strong start. 8 already this afternoon on 3 of 4 shooting. His only miss was from beyond the arc where he's 2 of 3, and they need to keep him active. The enemy had a great game last time out against Oklahoma State, but you need your known players to play like they're stars, and that's Christian James.
And Money McNeese, Richard Odoms also played well in that win in Bedlam up in Stillwater, 70-61. This Oklahoma team, where a year ago with Trae Young was really reliant on one guy, the roster seems to be better situated this year for Coach Kruger.
It's about floor spacing. It's about sharing the ball, having trust and faith in one another, you know, and they understand that in the Big 12 this year, for them to have success, you have to avoid those lapses, right? And in every game that they've had a loss so far in conference play, it hasn't been about not playing the right way. It's been about 3 or 4 minutes of not playing the right way or deviating from the system ever so slightly.
Here's Simi Chateau, the top 20 recruit for Vanderbilt, who has yet to score so far today. 5 on the shot clock. Chateau wide open for 3. The enemy fights for the rebound, but it comes to the Commodores. Maxwell Evans sets up his teammate Joe Toy, and the possession continues for the Doors. Toy tries to dump it off. Chateau couldn't handle the pass.
Doolittle almost couldn't handle the dribble. We had some sloppy play here early.
Brady Manick pulls the trigger.
Now see, that's a quick shot that he could get any time. That's a contested 3-point look. Do you want the contested 3 or do you want the open 3? And it's returned right away, though. Matt Ryan, again, one pass in the offense, falling down backwards. You got to work the half court a little bit. Force your opponent to have to defend multiple sides of the court.
Tell you what, Richard Odoms over the last 4 games has really come to life for Oklahoma. He's got 6, and the lead is back to 5.
You mentioned it. 6 double-figure games, including a season-high 17 against Kansas State. The crazy thing about that game, he only went 1 of 6 from the free throw line.
Now he is 3 for 3 so far today. That makes him 20 for his last 27 from the floor. And you're right, Odoms and McNeese struggle from the free throw line, but not from the paint. Later tonight on ESPN, number 9 Kansas battles 8th-ranked Kentucky at Rupp Arena as the SEC Big 12 Challenge presented by Continental Tire continues. The Jayhawks have won the last 3 against the Wildcats, and it's also a Sonic Blockbuster game tonight, 6 Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app.
Going to be a great game. Obviously, Kansas playing without Azubuike. I think the interesting matchup to watch is going to be the interior. Against Iowa State the other night for Kansas, in the second half they started swinging against Iowa State. You do that against Kentucky, you're going to have some really bad matchups, and that is going to allow guys like Nick Richards or Reed Travis to post up and get points in the paint. That means their screen defense is going to have to be much improved from where it was the other night. Because you know the Kentucky staff's watching that going, okay, so now they're going to switch. That's the only way they can defend an almost screen is by switching. Do you know what that's going to do for our bigs and the size and the length that we have?
Wetzel, great pass backdoor. The enemy blocks the shot. It's a held ball. The possession arrow will stay at this end. Bryce Drew, in his 3rd year as head coach at Vanderbilt, has gotten off to a rough start to conference play, but they're hoping this game here today in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, perhaps another chance to restart the season as we head towards February. Smith down the lane, no.
You mentioned it, though. When you mention this Vandy team, you have to talk about the fact that they are the 305th in experience in college basketball. They are extremely young. And then you lose a guy who is your one true pro in Darius Garland. A lottery pick talent, one and done, highest rated recruit in program history. Not there, who you built everything around. Now that puts a lot of point of emphasis on other guys to step up. And one of the things I've been impressed with by Bryce Drew is from the outside, it's easy to go, oh, they're 0-6 in conference play. That's not good. But yet, when you really watch this team play, you're seeing tremendous growth. They have changed their entire offensive situation. They're playing through the high post and the elbows now. They were doing that earlier this season. And yet this team is being able to go out and execute and compete against really good competition. Now they just got to figure out a way to win some of those games.
Right, that elbow series really was good against the Vanderbilt, or against the Volunteers rather, on Wednesday, when they took the #1 team in the country to overtime.
So if you can take #1 in the country to overtime, you have the ability to win some games. But you've got to play with that same kind of intensity. You can't just get up for the best team in the country and say, okay, hey, we're going to play hard, and then have other periods where you're not as committed.
Great job. That's scouting report read right there, and a beautiful pass. Odom tries again. Has 13 unanswered for Oklahoma. Timeout, Commodore.
Well, that's scouting report defense. Excited about where we're headed. We're recruiting great and have all the support in the world here at Oklahoma.
Well, part of the buzz that's already been created is from a transfer. And you get Jalen Hurts from Alabama. Obviously, the last 2 Heisman Trophy candidates, winners, had the near quarterbacks. What are some of the things you're going to focus on with Jalen to try to improve his game and get him to that similar kind of level?
Well, he's got to get in there and learn our system, and that's going to be a big part of it. And also to be the kind of leader that we need him to be. He's going to have to learn our guys, learn our team. But he's been there before. He knows how to win big games. He's a very, very interesting young man. He's just got a lot of depth to him. Very, very smart. And so excited to get a chance to work with him. I know our team has really welcomed him in.
What has it been like for you? Why have you been able to have such great success with quarterback position in particular?
Well, we've had good players there. We've got guys that have bought into the system. We've had great players around them, great coaches. Football is a game of many, and it takes so many people on the same page. And when you do that, guys are going to get outstanding recognition. It's been a joy to coach those two and really all the players we've had here the last few years.
All right, let's talk about the guy, the man of the hour, Kyler Murray, as he makes this very difficult decision that's in front of him. You heard John Gruden say he doesn't care about his physical stature, but there are some in the NFL that do worry about his height and his physical attributes. What would you tell those general managers and the front office people about Kyler's game that's going to allow him to transition so well to the NFL?
He's either going to play on your team or you're going to play against him, and you're not going to like playing against him. I mean, he's just an elite player, an elite competitor. He brings a skill set to the game that really has never been seen before. So Coach Gruden's exactly right. The guy can do anything, and he's going to make a hell of a quarterback for whoever takes him.
Coach, obviously we're here at the basketball game. Your team's going to get honored here at halftime. Lon Kruger has done such a tremendous job in this program, whether it's been Buddy Hield or Trey Young in recent memories. What is your relationship like with Coach Kruger?
Oh, it's great. He's a guy that's been in this business for a long time. One of the guys that I can call on as different situations come up. He's got great perspective, and he's brought a ton to our program here. So Coach Joe Castiglione's done a great job assembling so many great coaches, and we all work well together and really help each other, and Lon's certainly a big part of that.
All right, Coach, congratulations on the success of this past season. Look forward to seeing the Sooners next college football season. Doug, back to you.
Sean, thank you. And Coach Kruger's team pretty much doing to Vanderbilt right now what Coach Riley's team does to a lot of opponents. Basically, they've scored 3 consecutive touchdowns. They're on a 19-0 run to open up this 17-point lead, 33-16. Commodores have gone cold, and Oklahoma, the senior-laden team with Brady Manick as well as a sophomore, Odoms and James, have been putting points up in bunches. And so now for Vanderbilt off the timeout. Let's see what Bryce Drew's team does to try and stem the tide. All right, so Sean Farnham has not rejoined me here at the table. He's going to just, well, if you knew Sean, you'd understand why he's going to roam around Lloyd Noble Center right now and take in different angles of this basketball game for us.
Right now I'm sitting right across from you, Doug. But it's been impressive how Oklahoma, during that Lincoln Riley interview, has played and extended out this game. And you want to see a good execution out of a timeout and how a young team can respond. That's what you want to see if you're Bryce Drew. The game is getting away from you ever so slightly. And instead, you call a timeout, you talk to your team, say, hey, this is what we're going to run. We need to settle down and we need to execute. And they come out, they run that high post, elbow area game, and they're allowed to finish it.
We talked off the top about the youth of this Vanderbilt roster. They went nearly 6 minutes between field goals before that bucket by Matt Ryan. And really the top two upperclassmen, Sean, for Bryce Drew are first-year members of the playing group here in the program. They're transfers, including Ryan, who came over from Notre Dame.
Yeah, Doug, I mentioned it with Lincoln Riley. You know, it's amazing those quarterbacks that have won back-to-back Heisman trophies. And obviously Jalen Hurts comes in with an incredible resume from Alabama. But equally as impressive is what Lon Kruger's been able to do in this program with Trey Young. And, of course, before that, Buddy Hield, who was just announced today, he's going to be in the three-point shooting competition All-Star Weekend down in Charlotte.
Yeah, he's going to be in it with both Curry brothers we see. Both Seth and Steph will be going against Buddy Hield and the rest of them. Yeah, you know what? When you come into a Big 12 conference arena, as Saban Lee lays it in, and you look up, Sean, to the rafters and you see the retired jerseys, I mean, the Sooners can hang with pretty much anybody.
You look at Tisdale, King, Griffin, and look, the college game has changed so much. I mean, it's hard not to honor Trey Young, even though he was here for just one season.
Well, I think that whole conversation nationwide, as Odom scores two more, is going to change and evolve, because we've had more than a decade of the one-and-done era. And if you are Kentucky, do you devalue the fact that Anthony Davis, in the pantheon of great Wildcats, was only there 1 year? Of course not.
No, you can't. I mean, look at his accomplishments in that one season.
Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse, same thing, national champion, just like AD. And I think the same thing will hold true long-term here for Trey Young. You won't have the cumulative statistics to rank, you know, all-time in points and other stats. But the impact he had last year, leading the country in both scoring and assists per game, he clearly belongs up there with the Alvin Adams and Wayman Tisdale and Blake Griffin, etc.
Now, Odoms just has to be taken out of the game. He's fatigued. Looked at coach and said, hey, somebody get me. Coach looking up at the clock saying, hey, next stoppage of play here, we're going to get a timeout. You can stay out on the floor for another 22 seconds.
Here's Semi Chatou. He is yet to score this afternoon for Vanderbilt, trying to set him up on the post against Shimoni McNeese. That did not work well. Well, the SEC Big 12 Challenge continues with the big one coming up 6 Eastern over on ESPN. Kansas, Kentucky, and then following us here on ESPN2, it's the Razorbacks against Texas Tech. And Sean, can Chris Beard's 14th ranked Red Raiders stem the tide? They've dropped 3 in a row remarkably.
Well, and again, it's not because of the defense. It's because of their struggles at the offensive end of the floor. Jarrett Culver needs to do so much for that team to be successful that sometimes when he's not at his best, they can't win. And so they need to develop other guys around him that can score the basketball on a consistent basis to have that kind of success that garners the number 14 national ranking.
So Daniel Gafford and the Razorbacks will take on Texas Tech following us here on ESPN2. Ball out of bounds, and that takes us to break with Oklahoma on top by 17.
ESPN's
the best place for you to go do a game. I'm talking with the venue, the program, the hotel, the food, the whole package. Where do you love going?
Oh, it's got to be Lexington, Kentucky. Tony's Steakhouse is a phenomenal establishment in Lexington. You're thinking about 20,000 plus. You got the Kentucky Wildcats, and you've got fine cuisine all in one spot. And the hotel, by the way, is attached to the arena. You never have to go outside. It doesn't get better than that down there.
And I'll add to that, you can always count on 20,000 people in the building.
Well, that works.
The lob to McNeese. Nice idea by Aaron Kalichny. Vanderbilt has just gone stone cold at this end. They began the game 7 for 9 from the floor. They have missed 13 of their last 15. Coming up later tonight, we will take you to Rupp Arena. Number 9, Kansas. Number 8, Kentucky, as the SEC Big 12 Challenge presented by Continental Tire continues. 6 o'clock on ESPN. It's a Sonic blockbuster game. So, Sean, what did you hear while you were eavesdropping on that Commodores huddle during the last timeout?
Well, a lot of it was about the defensive end of the floor, and what Coach Bryce Drew is telling his team is, hey, we're guarding one-on-one. We're not going to win guarding one-on-one. We've got to have 5 guys aware where the ball is. We've got to be able to keep them out of the paint, because right now Oklahoma, it's way too easy getting inside the rim.
And that really is about Rashard Odoms especially. Over his last 4 games has gone for 17 against Kansas State, 11 against Texas and Oklahoma State. There's Doolittle inside. 3 Sooners already in double figures. Those the first 2 for Christian Doolittle.
Well, and Doug, that's one of the things that you were just seeing right there is they drive the ball in. The defense is watching. They're vacating the weak side of the court. That's too easy of a layup. You've got to contain the ball and not allow that deep of dribble penetration, because it breaks down your entire defense.
That foul was on Yanni Wetzel. College basketball really does make you scratch your head sometimes, Sean. How does Vanderbilt, just 3 days ago, go into Knoxville, Tennessee and take the #1 team in the country to overtime, and here they can't hang at all with Oklahoma?
Well, it's inconsistencies. When you have a young team, you see that. It's not that abnormal, especially when you're playing without what is expected to be your leader this college basketball season. A simple play like that, it ends up being a turnover just because you're not catching the ball. You're not slowing down. This game has sped up faster than Vanderbilt can handle it right now. A loose ball situation, and all you got to do is just step to it and pick it up. And instead you don't, and subsequently you get subbed out of the game and you go to the bench.
And Matt Ryan tried to tip it to Joe Toy instead of just grabbing it, and so it's Oklahoma basketball up 21. Neesmith clears the rebound. He's another good-looking freshman for the Commodores. He shares the backcourt with Saban Lee, the sophomore from Corona del Sol High School in Phoenix. He sets up Wetzel, who didn't even hit the rim. Jamal Bieniemy at the point. He's out there with a man he has replaced in the starting lineup, Aaron Calixte. 2 point guards for Lon Kruger. Christian James well short. Neesmith lowered his shoulder, and the foul goes against Oklahoma. Christian Doolittle picks up the personal.
You know, there's a lot of talk about this Oklahoma team coming out of the non-conference, and people were saying, hey, this team could be better than last year's team because of the team aspect of what they were trying to accomplish and how they were competing at the defensive end of the floor. You go to conference play and you take a couple of tough losses and you start questioning yourself a little bit. That's why I love this challenge being where it's located. It frees you up a little bit mentally. And it's not a conference game, but yet the level of importance might be even more so to reset your season and establish who you're going to be in the latter stages of conference play.
Yeah, Coach Kruger's team was 11-1 in the non-conference. The only loss came to Wisconsin. They were blown out by the Badgers, but they had some really nice non-conference wins. But since getting into conference play, it's been kind of win one, lose one. And like you say, Sean, this opportunity against Vanderbilt where the stakes aren't so high. Of course, you want bragging rights conference to conference. But they have an opportunity to take a step away, have a weekend where they don't have a league game, and play well, which they have done through the first half so far. Saban Lee connects.
For Vanderbilt right now, where they're at, it's about getting to halftime, resetting, and figuring out how you can try to settle down at the defensive end of the floor and not allow Oklahoma to just break right through your defense.
Extra pass to Freeman. Now his former high school teammate from Auckland, New Zealand shot a shot just like that a few seconds ago. Try it again. Under 10 seconds to go in the half. Matthew Moyer, the Syracuse transfer, glances at the clock, rises up, air ball. Well, that kind of summarizes the way the first 20 minutes went. Scatter their single game high, which obviously is not something you want to do. They got to clean that up, and will do so with Matt Ryan back in the starting lineup for the second half. And they've got to get something out of Simi Chateau, the freshman from Burlington, Ontario, a goose egg in the scoring column, and he has had nothing to do with this game on either end.
Well, actually, he has. He has had something to do with this game. He has 4 turnovers, and those 4 turnovers have allowed Oklahoma to have success. So, Simi wants to be an NBA draft pick, and he wants to play in the NBA. You got to have your presence felt in the game in a positive way. And in the first half, that was not the case.
He comes in averaging 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. But his stat line in that first half really does make you scratch your head.
0 points, 4 rebounds, 4 turnovers. He did have an assist. But you've got to cement yourself. This is a young man who's a top 25 prospect in the country last year, who says, no secret, he wants to be in the NBA. Well, if you're watching the NBA, if you're watching later on tonight, and you're watching the Celtics play the Warriors, that's the highest of high levels of what it's like in the NBA. You've got to come out here, and you've got to show out every game.
Well, Brady Manick, who was kind of a game-time decision, has missed the last 2 days of practice because of illness. Worked out this morning during the shoot-around, got the start, and played effectively in that first half. He's one of 3 Sooners in double figures. And there is Chateau with the first 2 points.
Now see if that ignites a fire and an energy level to try to get going. And it's not just at the offensive end, but that last possession defensively for Vanderbilt would concern me if I'm Bryce Drew. I mean, just all too simple to find a way to lob it to the rim, and no communication on the defense end. They try to go back to that same play, this time better communication.
But well, the strength and physicality of Christian James, he's 6'4", 213, can get anywhere on the floor here today.
Okay, so they take away the roll to the rim that time. Now you hit Christian James, and initially you look like you're in good position, but you let him get to that Big 12 logo, you've got no chance.
Off the bounce, Matt Ryan, no. The enemy gets the rebound, and here come the Sooners. Early second half here in Norman. Odom, so strong with the left hand.
So the problems we saw in the first half as far as giving up points in the paint continues to be the same problem. 6 points to start the second half. All of them have come in the paint.
And all 6 have come from their big 3 scorers today, James, Manick, and Odom, with 14, 12, and 12 points respectively. Chateau,
good pass.
Terrific dish, but he doesn't get an assist because the layup was missed by Wetzel.
And the expectation was the layup was made, right? There were 4 Vanderbilt Commodores on the opposite end of the court. You cannot anticipate a make. Somebody should have been there and trying to finish up, whether or not you could or not. Everybody just walking back to the other end.
Rashard Odoms is now 7 of 8, Sean, from the floor with 14 points so far today. Chateau had it blocked by Manick. The enemy is denied by Ryan, and here he comes the other way. The streaking Neesmith with a Euro step, and the foul comes against Brady Manick. Blocking foul that draws a few boos from a good crowd here at Lloyd Noble Center in Norman, Oklahoma.
Again, I feel for this Vanderbilt team. And I can sympathize with it because I went through a similar experience when I was in college. So Baron Davis, and obviously an elite level college player, elite level in the NBA, 2-time All-Star, played with Bryce Drew actually. He tore his ACL in the first half of our game in the NCAA tournament in the second round. So it happened really late into the season. But even from that, we go to beating Michigan with tractor trailer, a team that had won the Big Ten title and the conference and the tournament championship, playing so well. We end up beating them in Atlanta, and the next week we came out to take on Kentucky, and we had the doors blown off. I think we lost by 31 the next week because it set in that, oh my gosh, we lost our floor leader, we lost our general, we lost our playmaker, the guy that did so much for us on the offensive end of the floor. And for Bryce Drew's team, it happened earlier in the year, which to a certain extent is better because it gives you time to kind of redefine roles and try to find a way to make this work. But it is a complete reset on your entire season and everything that you had planned as a coaching staff and as a team. And mentally, that is a difficult thing to try to do.
Offensive foul against Manick.
The foul is called on Brady Manick. That's his second and the team's third.
Well, just to illustrate the fact that one blowout loss does not cost you a season. I mean, it doesn't take much to remember what happened to Kentucky in its opener to Duke. 118-84 got blown out by the Blue Devils, and what do you know? Kentucky's back in the top 10 and very much looking like a Final Four contender. Shatu with an air ball. Manick with the outlet. Manick, clean look.
Good ball movement that time, though, for Oklahoma. I've been so impressed with the enemy. And look, he's not scoring the points that he did in the first 2 games that he started, but his command and calmness at the point guard position, he's had an outstanding game as far as I'm concerned. He's only attempted 1 shot. He's got 5 assists on the game. And for a young man that played so well last time out, he was 17, doesn't miss a single shot, to only attempt 1 shot and care more about facilitating the offense says a lot about his mental makeup.
Manick with his second throwdown. Oklahoma getting to the rim at will. Off the double high post, Shatu hands it off to Neesmith, who lays it in. James crosses over Neesmith and sticks it in his eye.
Yeah, I mean, look, the young freshman is learning from the senior right now, and the senior's having his way.
Shatu off the mark. And here comes the enemy, the freshman from Katy, Texas, who actually was born in New Orleans, but he, like so many, wound up moving away from New Orleans because of Hurricane Katrina.
You've got to call timeout because
Rematch up, and so that's why Sean Farnham. It's a sonic blockbuster game.
Think about Dieter Glosson and how well he has played without Azubuike, and even beforehand, such an important cog. And he's going to have to play at a first-team All-American level all season long inside this conference to bring home its 15th consecutive Big 12 title.
Saban Lee, the first Vanderbilt Commodore into double figures. 56-32 Oklahoma. The Sooners seize control with a 27-7 run to close out the first half. And the Commodores have not been able to make a dent.
Well, they go to the zone defense, trying to force Oklahoma to have to shoot out over the top. First possession, the ball never got inside the paint.
Saban Lee missed the layup. Said that a couple of times for the Commodores here today. Well, Sean, in this SEC Big 12 Challenge this year for Bryce Drew's older brother Scott, things went a little bit better in Waco today. Baylor beat Alabama 73-68. Big win for Baylor as they sit firmly on the bubble. Joey Brackett's latest bracketology has him in the first 4 out. Back to Norman after this.
Well, not this year. I mean, I thought Kansas State, and then they struggled again today, and offensively they're challenged at times. You think Iowa State, they won at home against KU, but then they had an opportunity to steal one inside Allen Fieldhouse, and I think the mystique of Allen Fieldhouse has gotten to such a point where we talk about it that it actually does matter. You know, teams come in and they're like, man, I'm not quite as confident as they are when they're at home, obviously. Bill Self's team has been great. And this run has been outstanding because the Big 12, over the course of those 15 years, has had some of those seasons be where they are the best conference in college basketball. So this year, I'm going to go with C. None of the above, and they're going to win their 15th.
Well, it's going to happen at some point.
It will.
And Fog Allen may not hold the mystique at the moment that it did.
It still does.
I think it does, but at some point it's got to change. I think Iowa State's got a great chance. I think the Cyclones.
This year. Okay, but then you're assuming, though, that somebody's going to go into Allen Fieldhouse and win.
Absolutely.
Okay, I always say this. When you think of the Big 12, it's kind of like the old Ric Flair adage. to be the man, you have to beat the man. And KU's the man. So until you go in to their house and win, I'm not buying it. So every year when I do my media poll, I don't care what you have returning. I'm going to say Kansas is going to win the Big 12 until somebody proves me wrong.
And it makes perfect sense to take that line of thinking. But Kansas is not whole. I think it's possible their best play of the season is behind them.
I would agree with you on that.
And so that makes them, to me, susceptible. They've dropped a couple of road games. They've been pushed, certainly, at home. And it's just a matter of time. Now, will this be the year? I don't know. But I love what I see out of Iowa State. I mean, today, Lindell Wigginton was back to Lindell Wigginton in their SEC Big 12 Challenge game, coming off the bench.
Playing connected at the offensive end to a point where they had the highest field goal percentage of any team this year in college basketball on the road. They shot 69% at Ole Miss. And, oh, by the way, people say, well, hey, Ole Miss just lost to Alabama, so how good are they? And they want to question that, that's fine. Look at how they performed this season in that building in particular. The Pavilion is a great new facility for the SEC and for Ole Miss. And Iowa State went in there and shot the lights out of the building.
So I think it's like, I mean, what Steve Prohm has done for Iowa State basketball, to have the turnover that they've had, to continue to be relevant, I think they are dangerous. I think there's a chance.
I mean, to me, that's what I'm wondering. All right. I posted my picture earlier of where I was in 2003. I looked a lot younger than I do now.
Well, yeah,
that.
I would think so.
It's been a while.
That was a long time ago.
Bryce Drew doesn't look all that much younger. He just had a very different job.
He did, although it was within the basketball world, as the family does. Of course, Bryce Drew, his older brother Scott, we talked about, is the head coach at Baylor. And of course, their father, a coaching legend at Valparaiso. Money McNeese with the bucket.
And there is Bryce Drew. He doesn't look that much different. Just a different job. Look at him. He's aged very well. Go Coach Drew.
People forget, you know, they remembered the shot where he beat Ole Miss, of course, for Valpo. He was a first-round draft pick who played 6 years in the league.
The 16th pick overall by the Houston Rockets. He was in that New Orleans team. He's playing with Baron Davis, who we talked about earlier.
Well, he has his work cut out trying to climb up the SEC standings. Looked like they were going to make a big climb this year, but that has not been the case for a multitude of reasons. And nobody's surprised with what they're doing in Knoxville. And I don't just mean today blowing out West Virginia 42-29 as they play early in the second half. How about what the Vols are doing? Second time in program history, first time in a decade, they are #1 in the land.
Well, hey, look, last time they were #1 in the country, Bruce Pearl was their head coach. Now you got Rick Barnes, who made the transition from Texas over to Knoxville, Tennessee. And you look at the makeup of this team. This is a program that has never made a Final Four on the men's side. Obviously, we know the storied history on the women's side, but on the men's side, this is a year where you have to believe in Tennessee. I got my reasons for why I believe in this team are very simple. You look at the one-and-done era, there's only been 2 teams that have won a national championship that have been dominated by one-and-dones.
Right.
It was Kentucky, and then it was Duke. This year, you look at the rest of them, they've all had experience. Well, this Tennessee team has experience. They have a defensive intensity, the ability to want to lock down and defend, and a toughness to get stops, in particular when they need them. And then you have star power. Grant Williams, the reigning SEC Conference Player of the Year, and his running mate, Admiral Schofield, are stars at the college level. Grant Williams is going to be the back-to-back SEC Player of the Year. Coming up a career-high game against Vanderbilt, 43 points, 23 of 23 from the free throw line. This is a Tennessee team that I've thought for the last month, even when Michigan was undefeated and Virginia was undefeated and Duke was #1 in the country, I thought Tennessee's been playing the best basketball in college basketball over the course of this season.
Miles Reynolds with the bucket, the grad transfer from Pacific. All right, so in watching Tennessee this year, I can't help but continue to think while I watch Grant Williams do his thing, Bernard King. The way he is able to score in the post against larger opponents, he shoots his turnaround on the way up like Bernard King used to do. Of course, another volunteer. I keep thinking he is Bernard King.
He uses angles excessively well. He gets his shoulders. He's got such massive shoulders that when he dunks in the paint, he often gets really deep post position. And then once you're buried, you've got no opportunity, even if you're a superior athlete with greater length. Grant Williams is a very unique player, and Ethan Happ gets a ton of credit for his passing ability and being the best passing big in the country. That might be true, but Grant Williams, the entire offense of Tennessee is ran through his hands, whether it's the high post or in the short corner, which makes him a dynamic passer and talent as well because he's really unselfish.
Lee with the turnover. Calixte connects. He's had a nice game off the bench here today for the Sooners.
And I'll tell you what, Oklahoma plays like this, they're going to pick up a ton of wins down the stretch of Big 12 play. You come off of this game, and you've got a meeting with Baylor here in 2 days. And then before you go on the road at West Virginia, then you get Iowa State and Texas Tech both at home. Really strong at the defensive end of the floor. Good unselfishness this afternoon. Shooting 53% on the afternoon.
We had a chance this morning to talk both to Calixte, who misses this time, and the freshman who has just taken his place in the starting lineup a couple of weeks ago, Jamal Bieniemy. Their synergy is working. Whatever role, it's working for these Oklahoma Sooners. Time, Kansas, Kentucky, from Rupp Arena, top 10 showdown. It is a sonic blockbuster that you must watch.
Two winningest programs in college basketball locking up in the middle of conference play. Well, for Kentucky, a really important game as they have sort of really pick up their understanding of how this young group wants to play together to find success. They didn't have a great non-conference from the standpoint of picking up the wins that are going to garner the attention, and a lot of that was predicated upon night one against the Duke Blue Devils. And when Duke took it to them, everybody kind of fell in love with Duke and forgot about Kentucky for a little bit, which is hard to do with Coach Cal's group. Wildcats right there. And the other thing you think about with this SEC Big 12 Challenge this year, 3 of the teams that we talked about and how strong and how historic it has been for this conference so far that were on that ranked list aren't participating this year because of the difference in numbers, and it's set up earlier than then teams show out. So LSU, which is undefeated in conference play right now, not in the challenge. Auburn, which has been in the top 15 seemingly all season long, not in the challenge. Mississippi State, which has been top 25 all year long, also not in the challenge.
We should give a mention to Hannes Pola, who's come off the bench for Oklahoma. There's Lee quietly having a nice game other than the turnovers for Vanderbilt. But Hannes Pola, he is a large man with just his 3rd made bucket on the year.
You got to have your hands ready to come off the bench. Beautiful dump down pass, gathered himself and able to finish. Yeah, defensively though, where are you at that you're giving up that much space to a player that size, that deep in the paint?
He's just a sophomore out of Finland. 267 is how he tips the scales at 6'11". He was a pretty good recruit along with Brady Manek and Trey Young. They collectively were one of the top 20 recruiting classes coming in a year ago, and they still have hope that with that size, Hannes Pola can contribute going forward.
Pola just contributed on that play by standing in the key for longer than he should have.
That's called a 3-second. Well, a chance here for Lon Kruger to get some of his bench players a few more minutes. Christian James has led the way, not surprisingly, for Oklahoma. His 19 points, leads all scorers. Joe Toy off the mark. And there is Christian James, the senior out of Bel Air High School in Houston. We've got an oddity in this game that 3 different players on each side were high school teammates. Christian James was a high school teammate at Bel Air High School with Maxwell Evans. Joe Toy at Whitney Young Magnet School in Chicago was a teammate of Miles Reynolds.
He may look like Bird, but he looked like McHale on that one.
That's Brady Manek having a nice game.
How about that? Great footwork. I don't want to interrupt your story, and I want to get back to it because it's a great point. You never see this in college basketball, this many high school teammates playing against each other. in one setting, but that was a tremendous move.
James took a shot to the face. And the foul on Cleavon Brown.
Look at Manning. Hey, so much of the comparisons of Bert. Look, just settles himself. Hey, let's go McHale on you. Go a little up and under.
That's a good call. That was very Kevin McHale.
Oh, look at that. Show the ball and then step right underneath and finish.
But the hair is all Larry Bird. Now that he's grown it out this year, there's no question. And with that little mustache going too.
Well, that's my wife. Maybe I should go with that look. What do you think?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And Brady Manick will check out. We can show you what folks have been talking about for a few months since he grew the hair. Of course, the hair was short as a freshman. You didn't think about it, but that's a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, but Bird's got a little bit more body to his hair, right? I mean, the volume of his hair is just a little bit thicker.
You wore mousse back then.
All right.
Mousse in your hair. No mousse now. You're old enough to remember mousse back in the 80s?
Yes.
Come on.
You spray the bottle on the big like.
Right, the big puffy white thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, nice round of applause for Brady Manick, who again has not been feeling his best over the last few days. Gave Coach Kruger a tremendous effort this afternoon. Ryan. There's Saban Lee once again. Boy, he has tremendous athleticism at 6'2", 183. He's playing the point right now and for the rest of the season, but
probably more natural at 2.
Yeah, he is explosive. He can score the basketball, averaging 13 points per game for Vandy. Freeman, catch and shoot. And there, over his old Auckland, New Zealand high school teammate, he gets 2 more. There is your third pair. Although it was Freeman who got the block shot in the first half on his old high school teammate at Westlake Boys. His high school teammate, Yanni Wetzel.
That's a great ball movement against the zone defense. Working that high post area. And you have to stay true to the back line, which is why Wetzel was a step off. And when you give a step off, that's going to give you enough room to be able to knock down a shot.
Well, when those 2 guys right there came out pregame, they had a big hug and had fun. I went out and interrupted them and said, hey, guys, can I get a little trash talk out of the 2 of you? Nothing. They were both so polite. 6'10", 6'11" Kiwis. Each of them could have snapped me like a twig. Had no interest in getting into any of that. Oh, I'm better than you.
I'm glad that they didn't snap you like a twig. I would have had to call the game by myself.
Well, I think you could do it.
I think dream for me, but I do like working with you.
Saban Lee with the free throw. But I thought they were tremendously polite young men who said, well, it'll be decided out on the floor who the better player is. I said, who was the better high school player? And they both kind of smiled and shrugged their shoulders. Said, we'll decide it on the floor. Although when Matt Freeman blocked the shot of Yanni Wetzel in the first half, I do think he yelled out a couple of things that perhaps we can't mention here on this family broadcast.
You can probably hear it live on ESPN+.
Chance for 3 for Simi Shatu. Well, be sure to make ESPN Plus your home for college basketball, UFC, and thousands of live events, plus the 30 for 30 library and exclusive original shows. Sign up now, download the ESPN app, or visit ESPNplus.com. Well, there will be better days for Simi Shatu, the 6'10" freshman from Burlington, Ontario. He has struggled, as have the Commodores, in this SEC Big 12 Challenge matchup. By the way, we should say
for coaches versus cancer. In fact, his event that I've been part of now for the last 5 years, the Las Vegas Classic, raised $1.2 million last year. They're expected this year in May, and I'll be back there once again for it, to raise $1.5 million this year in the fight against cancer. And obviously it's been close to home for me. I lost my father-in-law November 8th after a 13-year battle with cancer, and we do a great thing at ESPN with the V Foundation, which is very important to all of us. But I am a full supporter of anything that is going to draw more attention and help raise money in the fight against cancer to try to end this disease. And So lucky to be part of Coach Kruger's event. I've done the Nashville event the last 2 years with Bryce Drew. That event is continuing to grow in the Nashville area. So if you're a fan of Vandy and you want to be part of it, find a way to help end this fight, because it's a disease that has impacted all of us.
Very well said. This is Miles Reynolds, young man who grew up in the Kenwood neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, and he draws the charge. And there is a very presidential gentleman who is watching from Washington, D.C. today, who approves of the way Mr. Reynolds has played. That's because he calls him Uncle Barack, basically. Barack Obama and the Reynolds are family friends.
Do you think President Obama's watching?
He's a hoop junkie. Of course he might be watching. That's his friend.
If President Obama is watching, first of all, please tweet me and let me know that you're watching. I'm at Sean Farnham. Right, but more importantly, I have questions for him. Bill Walton suggested that President Barack Obama should be the head coach of UCLA basketball.
And you say to that?
Probably not the best selection, but I wonder what he would be like as a coach. He loves the game. I mean, he's always around. He used to have the legendary pickup games at the White House when he was there. There he is, Miles Reynolds with Barack Obama.
And again, they are family friends who grew up rooting both for the Chicago White Sox. Although Barack didn't grow up rooting for the White Sox. Of course, he grew up in Hawaii. But all White Sox fans and a huge hoop junkie. Although I don't think
Jason Benetti would be so proud.
Because
he's the voice of the White Sox.
Oh, yes, he is. But Barack doesn't play pickup anymore, I don't think. The president has hung up his high top.
That's fine. He's pick up a club and hit the golf ball.
Pola with the block shot.
What a move, and the finish, come on!
That is Patrick Giha, a senior from Leawood, Kansas.
The guys on the bench absolutely loving it.
Shatu.
Yeah, shoots 7% from beyond the arc. They turn that one down and shoot somewhere else.
He was 1 of 14 from long range coming in.
And 0 for 3 now today.
Little pick and roll to the big fella. Under control. Pola lays it in. It is all working for the Oklahoma Sooners today. Timeout. Joe Test coming in.
Listen, the big game. It matters. So, look, it's going to be a great Super Bowl. I'm surprised. On Get Up yesterday morning, Damian Woody and Bobby Carpenter were both very much so on the idea that it's not going to be much of a game, and that this isn't going to be like your normal Patriots Super Bowl win, and that they're going to control it. It's because of that I actually believe it, not just because I live in L.A. I'm a 49ers fan, so the Rams and we really don't get along too well.
You grew up in Northern California.
Yeah. So while living in L.A., I think people are undervaluing C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley, that combination, how good it can be to take off some of that pressure off of Jared Goff.
Toy has it blocked by Pola. And the foul against Reed Streller. That leaves Matthew Moyer slow to get up.
What do you think?
Patriots.
Big?
Same, potentially, but it's the same kind of thing with picking against Kansas in the Big 12. Until they get knocked off, how do you ever pick against Belichick and Brady? It doesn't make sense.
You know they got knocked off, right?
Yeah, but they've been to the Super Bowl 9 times in 18 years. Who does that?
Nobody. It's historic. That's what makes it so great. Look, as a 49er fan growing up, I never thought I would think or see another quarterback that I could think would be better than Joe Montana.
You have.
And Tom Brady is clearly that guy.
Well, Sean, tonight after X Games Aspen on ESPN, tune in for Sports Center with John Anderson and Steve Levy. They'll break down Warriors Celtics and have post-game reactions, plus all the highlights from Kansas, Kentucky. And you'll hear from Tom Brady and all the latest on the Super Bowl tonight, 12 Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app. Well, Jamal Bieniemy would have been much more interested, the freshman point guard for Oklahoma, in the Super Bowl if not for the outcomes of the 2 conference championship games. See, Jamal grew up in Katy, Texas, but he's from New Orleans. Here comes Saban Lee off the turnover. So Jamal Bieniemy is a huge New Orleans Saints fan, and yet his uncle Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs.
They're falling on top of each other.
It's all about Hannes Pola.
You got to be careful. You don't want to get hurt on the bench.
Hannes Pola with a career-high 6 points to put an exclamation point on what's been a really nice performance by OU. Here's another look at the alley-oop. Miles Reynolds to number 44, who throws it down. Shot clock is off as the student section chants, "Let's go Pola." He is clearly the people's choice. Big smile on the face of number 44. And Lon Kruger's Oklahoma Sooners put another win in the column under the Big 12 Conference. Jamal Bieniemy was terrific. Didn't score, but impacted the game all around. He leads the Sooners to an 86-55 win. Up next, the SEC Big 12 Challenge presented by Continental Tire continues with Arkansas and Texas Tech. But for right now, let's get you back to the studio.